Hey guys, Anthrax here, going to be doing a tutorial on velocity in Sony Vegas for beginners. If you have used velocity before, this probably will not benefit you at all. Maybe you'll pick up a tip or two, but this is basically just a tutorial for people who have never used it before. Now that that's out of the way, let me show you the kind of thing we're going to be doing. If you don't know what velocity is at all, velocity is a type of slow-mo that you can do in Sony Vegas. There are two types without plugins that you can do in Sony Vegas that I am aware of. The first is if you hold control and drag from here, you'll get a squiggly line, and that'll slow the clip down. And then velocity is the cleaner form of slow-mo. So let's take a look at what we're going to be making. Alright, so that is what we are going to be making. So let me clear the timeline and we will start fresh. So first you're going to get your song that you want to use and your clips. So I just got a few random clips. I can show you one way of syncing and then I might go and show you another way of syncing. But this is how I do it. You always want to make sure to disable resample, because if you don't disable resample whenever you do any kind of slow-mo, it will have ghosting lines and or, let me just show you. It's easier if I show you. So if we leave it on smart resample and we go to best full, if we make a clip slow, let me just control drag, you'll see it's got these weird ghosting lines where it like duplicates the clip kind of, and it doesn't look smooth at all. So that's why we make sure to disable resample before we start. And you're basically just going to go find the first shot of the clip. So that's my first shot. I'm going to go to the frame before and hit S on my keyboard to split the clip. And you're going to want to find the part in the song where the drop happens. Clearly it's right here because of the big waveform change. Some people use markers when they sync. Actually, I'm sure most people do. I don't, so I don't use them. You can use M on the keyboard to make a marker to mark the sync points that you want to use if you so feel like. I don't use markers, so I'm not going to be doing that today. So we've got our disable resample, we've got the first shot split, and we've got the build up. I'm just going to add a quick crossfade to the clip to make it nicer and to the audio. And here we've got the little intro part. And now, obviously, it's out of sync with what we want it to be. We want it to hit the bigger da, 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 da parts, and it's kind of in between right now. Like, this is the other sync point that I'm going to do. I think it was actually this one. This one is the one I'm going to do for the second shot. So what we're going to do now is we have our first shot split. Now we're going to cut and go to our second shot split. So that's the second shot. So we're gonna go there and cut it. I believe it's, yeah, right there. And now we have this gap of black screen. So with velocity, you're going to just drag the clip out and it's gonna repeat because it's gonna obviously go to where it is and then repeat again. So we're gonna have to fix this with the slow-mo. To deal with the audio, however, if you click U on your keyboard, it will unlink the audio from the video. And so we're going to split and delete the part where the shot repeats in the audio so that we don't hear the shot twice. And then also a fun trick is if you hold control on the audio part and you get the squiggly line to do slow-mo, you can drag it out to match the gap in between, and it'll sound really awkward. Let me solo the track for you real quick. It's got like a weird metallic-y kind of tinny backtone. So basically to fix that, if you right click and click properties on the audio, you can lock it to the stretch, and that will slow the audio down to match where you've slowed it in the timeline. So it'll sound a lot crisper. So let's watch that now. So it sounds a lot cleaner than it did before. But anyway, back to the velocity. If you right click on your clip in the timeline, you can go up to insert remove envelope and go to velocity. It'll give you a green line like this. So this is the velocity line. If you've never used any kind of slow-mo that requires a line, it might look daunting and confusing, but I assure you it is a lot less complicated than it looks. So every time you double click on the green line, it will add a keyframe. So we will go, I like to do okay, disclaimer, I'm showing you how to do my version of velocity. I know other people do it differently. I know my one friend does 200% and then he does one next to it at 50 and repeat. I'm just going to be showing you how I do velocity. So we've made our keyframe. I'm going to put it very close to the first keyframe at the beginning. I always start it at 100. At the very beginning, they give you a keyframe at 100. I leave it at 100. I make a keyframe next to that one at 100, and I usually go somewhere, it depends on the song. Anywhere between 128% and 155% are the base givens. If you hold control, it will go up and down point by point, so you can be way more precise, or you can right-click the keyframe and you can pick a velocity point to set it to normal, or you can enter your own amount, like that. So those are the tips for that. I usually just use the base ones that they give me because it's easier to just drag and go, okay, I want it at 141. The thing I need to stress the most is while doing velocity, you need to make sure it's consistent throughout the video for the most part. There might be spots where you can go a little wild and whatnot, but for the most part, try to keep the number values and percentages consistent. So if you're doing 141 on the fast parts, try to keep it at 141. If you're keeping the slow parts at, I don't know, 45% or 50%, keep it around there. Otherwise, it might have a weird kind of flow to it in the edit. But anyway, we've made our sped up keyframe. And so now the video goes way faster. And so I want to have it be fast until about the bolt pullback starts. So right about here, I want it to start slowing down. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to double click back here and keep the keyframe percentage at 141%. And all this does is it makes all of this part in between the same speed. And then now I'm going to drop this one down to 52%. So now we have fast to slow. And then what would be a cool thing to do, and what you saw in the preview of what we were going to be doing today, is there is this sync point in the song right here. This little beat. So I will double click again to make another keyframe just to again make sure that this area is all the same speed. These two areas are the same speed with one fade down. And then on this little beat, I'm going to drag this back to 100. So now it should be a nice little sync part to the audio and just a little more depth to the edit. And now you see it still repeats. We didn't quite get it perfect. It's not perfect the way it is. So what we have to do is now, the best part for this would probably be on the scope in. So the scope in is here. And I've just made another keyframe. So again, this whole section stays at 100 speed. And then here we're going to drag this down just until he doesn't shoot in the repeat. And I don't know if you caught it, but on this thumbnail here on the right side, it's always the preview of the last frame of the video clip. So let me get in here and you can see it again. If I leave it at 86, you can start to see the XP from the kill come up. You want to just drag it down until, so see, there's the muzzle flash at 59. That means it's still repeating. So we need to drag it down one more to 52, and then now it doesn't repeat. So basically with velocity, you're trying to add slow-mo to add some more depth to your edit and make it look cleaner, but you're also trying to match the frame so that it doesn't repeat anything in the video. With control slow-mo dragging, if you control drag, it will just slow down what you have selected and it won't repeat at all. But with velocity, you need to do it manually. So now let's look at what we have on this first clip. So that looks pretty nice. And just like that, we've done velocity. It might, if it seems confusing still, I'll do it a couple more times just to get it through to you that it's just a routine-based thing. all you're basically doing every time is you're starting at a base number of 100 and you're speeding it up with 2 keyframes to keep momentum the same at some variation of whatever you feel like is the proper speed for your style you're going for. And you're just repeating it until you get the video where you want it, and make sure the clip isn't repeating on the shot before the next clip comes in. So let's take this clip. Let's fast forward until the next shot. So that's the next shot. So now we need to find another sync point. So let's listen to the song again. So this is the big drop, but if I were to put it here, I would have to speed it up so much it would look unnatural. Let's take a look at what that would look like. So now I've trimmed the clip so that it fits into that pocket. So now let's do velocity. Let's go back up, all about consistency, 141. And let's go to here and then drop it down to 52. And then this part of the song has a nice beat, so let's do the same thing we did where we drag it back up to 100. And then now let's watch. We didn't make it there. So now let's add a keyframe and hike up the speed until we get to the point that it needs to be at. I believe it's right there. So now we're at 266%. I am in Vegas 13. The limit on velocity percentages in Vegas 13 is 300% speed. In newer versions of Vegas, I'm aware it goes up to 1,000%. I don't know why you would ever use that fast of a transition in an edit. It looks jarring to me. If that's the style you're going for, then you're going to need the newer versions of Vegas, but all these concepts still apply. So let's take a look at this next clip sped up to fit this next sync point. That looks too jarring to me, and I don't really think it looks good personally. If you thought it looked fine, then be my guest. But I feel like this sync point is too fast, so let's find another one. This one. That's another good beat, so let's try that one instead. And we're gonna have to slow it down. It's gonna repeat. We're gonna do the same thing with the audio so that the audio doesn't repeat. We're going to hit U to unlink it, S to split it, and then delete it. We're going to hold control and drag to fill the gap. Right click the properties and make sure we click lock to stretch. So now the audio is sorted. I don't know why the velocity on this one away. All right, anyway, we're gonna do the sync on this one next. And we're going to do the same numbers, 141. Let's go to, I want it to be slow right here. So let's go here and move it to 141. Go to the next one over, drop it down to 52. We're gonna go until we get to this beat. And we're gonna do the same thing with the 100 to give it some more character. It's gonna sync the speed up back to the beat, gives it a little more depth in my opinion. Then there's another one here on this waveform. So let's do the same thing, but slower again. And let's check on where we're at. We're a little bit behind, so let's double click here and let's bring it back up to a speed where it finishes. So I think 100 is going to repeat. It does, so let's drop it down to 93, I believe is okay. Yes, so it matches perfectly. So now let's take a look at this clip. So that looks pretty good in my opinion. We're basically just syncing to the parts of the song where the melody kicks in. And we're doing that with speeding up and slowing down to give it some more momentum and sync points in the song. So we're going from fast to slow to normal velocity to slow to normal again. And at any point with these, you can bring, if you want the fast to be back at 141, you can, but you got to remember you have to match the frame rate. So to counteract going up that high, you would have to go down so slow on this part to make it match. It just wouldn't look good. So just keep that in mind. That's why I'm only going to 100% on these. But that is now synced. So let's watch that one more time. All right, and there you go. That's basically how velocity works. You're just making a couple keyframes in a row to keep the momentum of the same speed percentage, and then you're dropping it down to the next. Another trick that people use, I do sometimes, I don't always, but if you see these little transitional fades that look like a little hill going up or like a diagonal, you can right click in them in the middle and it'll add these options. So smooth fade is the standard. I usually use that, but you can use a linear if you want and it'll change the shape of it. I know some people change the slowdown parts to fast fade so it looks more like a U, like a curve down instead of a straight line, and they change the slow to normal or slow to fast parts in there. They change that to a slow fade. So they do fast fade here on the slow down parts and a slow fade on the speed up parts. So let's see what that difference looks like. And so now let's put it back at smooth. It's not too noticeable, but it does change the way that it looks and the way that it transitions. So those are just the basics for velocity. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments and I'll try to get back to you on them. But for now, that's pretty much all we're doing. Stay tuned for more tutorials. All right.